again. Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. This is S4A Livestream number 58, being recorded on Thursday, October 27, 2022. We're picking up today with the 30 people in the chat. Twitch.tv/socialismS4A is where this is being streamed live right now. From the last stream, number 57, in which we ended up talking about the crises of capitalism, particularly 2008 and the likely upcoming crash. We've got some stories about that, and also about COVID and some other viruses that are going around this season. So that's going to be kind of the bulk of the show. This will be posted at youtube.com/socialismforall, also soundcloud.com/socialismforall after the live stream has been recorded. And I did fix the image issue that I was having where the images weren't loading in the center of the screen. They really bury it in the settings in a place that I really wasn't looking. But anyway, that problem, which we've had, I don't know, for like the last 3 or 4 streams, has been fixed now. So you won't be hearing me click the mouse quite as much and dragging the images around the screen. Though in a way, it almost made the videos a bit more dynamic. There was movement on the screen, but anyway, I think it's better to just load them up in the middle. So anyway, what's new since the last stream? Not a ton. If you follow on Twitter, twitter.com/socialismS4A. Of course, I tweet probably too much, but it's an okay way to stay current with some news, and that's where I do get some of the stuff. There's dialogue going on there that maybe some of it used to go on Facebook. That's where S4A started out before getting kicked off like 3 or 4 times and just saying basically, it wasn't worth the effort after a while, especially as Facebook is largely just sort of boomer central at this point. But anyway, just a few stories sort of off the top of my head here. People in the chat were mentioning Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks and his sort of ridiculous thing that he was saying. So I put that up on the screen. If you look down at the bottom at the black portion, so Alex Michelson, I don't know who that is, asked Cenk, "Are you voting Caruso?" And Cenk says, yes, Karen Bass's main message seems to be that she's an establishment Democrat, no interest, who thinks that things in LA are generally fine. They're not, and will work the system better. The problem is the system. There's nothing but incompetence and corruption here. We need change. So now if you look at the top, sorry for this being a little bit out of order, but it saved me from doing multiple screens. You can see that I retweeted Cenk saying, Bernie and Karen Bass believe in working within the Democratic Party system. And what has that gotten us? Nearly nothing. Well, my head exploded when I read that because Cenk Uygur has been one of the leading forces in trying to browbeat progressives and the left. Of course, Marxists probably stopped listening to Cenk a long time ago. But, people who are trying to either move beyond the Democratic Party or work within the, quote, left wing of the Democratic Party, which, spoiler alert, you really can't do. It's a 1% controlled party, completely dominated by bourgeois influence. It's not a space where proletarians, people who don't own capital that they can live off of, can really organize for, proletarian interests, for class struggle. We need to create a separate proletarian-controlled space for that. And this has been kind of one of the major questions for as long as TYT has been going. Of course, they came down hard in 2016 on the supporting Hillary Clinton side, not breaking off from the Democratic Party. Honestly, if the U.S. left had just stopped all of this nonsense back in 2000 when Ralph Nader was giving the Green Party one of their best moments, we could actually have more of a functioning left at this point. But people refuse to leave the Democratic Party year after year, decade after decade. I mean, that was 22 years ago that, Nader got several percentage points and was sort of made a splash there. And that was, of course, coming out of the 90s with Ross Perot, who was a right-wing candidate, but gave a major challenge to both the Democrats and Republicans. I'm sure there's all kinds of inside story there. It's not a Ross Perot endorsement. But the point is that people have been sick of these parties, and for good reason, for a long time. And again, it's just, oh, no, 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 we need to cling to the Democrats for another year, for another election cycle. Well, instead of building something outside the Democratic Party, this has been the strategy. Where has that gotten us? And then, strangely, as Cenk is saying, what has this gotten us? Nearly nothing, just wall to wall corruption. Well, it's not corruption, it's just capitalism. The Democrats are a capitalist party, and they're doing what capitalists do, which is using money to get influence and power and more money. So, the fact that this is sort of surprising to Cenk, or that he's like, reversing his tune about this now, very confusing to me. A lot of people were posting like, did the Democratic Party, did your DNC check bounce this month? Like, what's going on? So Cenk says Bernie said that his, quote, friend Joe Biden, my good friend Joe, and he is a good friend, would get us $15 minimum wage and much more. His friend screwed us and he didn't say a word about it. Wow, Cenk, are you joining the Greens? Are you moving left? Like, what are you doing? No, he's supporting this guy Caruso, who apparently is basically a Republican. And as we know, Cenk used to be a Republican, and I guess he's going back to it. But, this is keeping people within the framework of the 1% controlled parties. Democrats, we did this a couple streams ago. It's basically like the same exact industries contribute to both parties. There's a little bit of a difference with the Democrats. They get donations from people in education. Republicans really don't, except for for-profit education. Democrats get from women's issues groups, and they get from public servants and more unions. All right, so those are like the three differences. Otherwise, the top 10 industries donating to both real estate, banks, medical. So like it was identical, almost point for point. And this is the thing. It's not just that analysis. It's over and over. The United States does not have a democracy. Princeton study on democracy showed this years ago. Just look up Princeton study on democracy, United States. You'll find many articles that this was a political science study, which got a lot of popular write-up. Basically, it showed that there is no statistical correlation between public opinion and public policy in the United States. But there is a strong correlation between rich capitalist opinion, people who donate to the Democratic and Republican parties and control them through their donations. There's a strong statistical correlation between their opinions and public policy. So effectively, also what that study showed is that it varies a little bit whether it's a governor race, Senate race, House race, things like that. But with 80% or better, and I think in Congress, it is like 96% accuracy. Whoever spends the most money wins the election. Again, 96% of the time. I think for the Senate, it's a little lower, like 82%. Whoever spends the most money, with a very high degree accuracy wins the election. That tells you that it's not a lock, but basically elections are bought in the United States. So, this is the electoral system that we have in the United States. Cenk telling people now, finally taking up left language of like, we can't work within the Democratic Party system. But what does he do? Does he send people left? Does he send them to the Greens, to PSL, to like any of the other sort of parties that are actually more to the left of the Democrats that don't take the corporate money, etc.? No, of course. Of course he's not going to do that. He's basically just going around in the loop. And the real irony, I thought, here was people posting Jimmy Dore memes in response to this. Like, are you aware that Jimmy Dore has done the exact same thing, that he's now on Tucker Carlson and doing all that stuff? Anyway, speaking of Jimmy Dore and that entire grift scene, I wanted to just point this one out. This was going around today. We've covered RBN a few times, Revolutionary Blackout Network. Half these people have blocked me now. But Glenn Greenwald joins RBN today. And when they say joins, they don't mean join as like, a regular, they just mean like joining as a guest. But, what do you need to know at this point about Glenn Greenwald that you don't already know in late 2022? I posted something mocking this, which is, of course, where Nick finally blocked me. But you get the commenters, whether you comment on Jimmy Dore or Revolutionary Blackout or whatever it is, any time that you're like, can you fucking stop the grift? Seriously, it's just shameful. You always get the chorus of people like, how is that grifting? How is that supporting fascism? Whatever. Well, I mean, we've done live streams here showing Jimmy Dore doing PR work for Boogaloo Boys, libertarian right-wing militia, or with Tulsi Gabbard, and on up to people like Giorgia Meloni, who's a lifelong fascist, now major Italian politician with actual power. So, and no matter what you do, you always get those like, oh, how is that fascist? How is that grifting? And it's just, I've stopped replying to these people at this point, because it's like, all that's going to happen, and it happens every single time, is they just keep countering with something because they don't want to hear it. And they want to explain it away, and they want to stay in that state of denial. And it's just sad. But anyway, this entire thing, this is why we started doing the Hanging with the Sockdem Gang response videos years ago on this channel. And it's because of exactly this. We need to leave all this shit behind and move on from it. Kyle Kalinske, recently somebody sent me a link of him and I watched it. Him talking about how Joe Biden is probably the best president of his lifetime, Kyle says. Like, Biden actually hasn't been that bad. I've been surprised by it. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, so these people stand for absolutely nothing. They're just going to lead you in circles. You need to join the left, leave this entire thing behind, because it's, you could call it controlled opposition. It doesn't really matter what it is at this point. It's wrong, and it's not going to lead you anywhere. And that's kind of the bottom line. So anyway, what do we have going on in the chat? Let's just get into the chat today. We do have a lot of articles that I want to cover. We'll get straight into the chat. Not a ton of other housekeeping today. Housekeeping, sure, whatever. All right. Yes, I did get the podcast that you sent me. I didn't have time to listen to it yet, but there's an upcoming crash. It's already priced in. Well, so we'll look at it. There's, the crash that the UK experienced, and then Japan, talking about the everything bubble that we covered in the last stream. So, a crisis is coming. The question for the left is, what can we do to mobilize people in the wake of that? Because we weren't prepared for 2008. Capitalists had been telling the working class, proletarians, non-capitalists for a long time that capitalism was now stable, that they had worked all the bugs out. Oh, you don't have to worry about it. Boom, 2008 happens. Everybody's just caught unawares, caught with their pants down, just completely vulnerable. And, anyway, completely just brain fart. But, we're not going to let that happen again. As George Bush said, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, can't get fooled again. Thank you. But yeah, let's not get fooled again. Let's get prepared, because it's probably coming, and really quickly. And we have to make the absolute most that we can of this teachable moment about capitalism. That's the bottom line. Capitalism, as it goes on, there's less and less profit in the system. It's going to get more and more tyrannical. It's going to get more and more unstable. The need to abolish it, which is going to take massive amounts of organizing and revolutionary effort, is going to be no longer something that is optional. It's going to be obligatory if you want to avoid sort of Mad Max style chaos, and probably even more of a police and prison state than before. All right. Somebody talking about the U.S. needs to state capitalism. We're already in a. We don't actually need that. Before we transition to democratic socialism, I'm not really sure what you're talking about. But no, the U.S. is already in an incredibly advanced stage of capitalism where, there's very little true competition. There is competition among firms, but the firms are very large. They've already swallowed many of their small competitors. And we're going increasingly towards sort of the everything company that is the final merger of everything. But it's still capitalism. There's still a capitalist class which owns and controls it, and they're a tiny minority of the people. And then the rest of us who don't own stake in that, don't control it, and have to sell our labor to get by in life. Whereas they can live off of capital, basically live off of our labor. And yeah, so the need to abolish capitalism remains. And I don't think, need a transitional stage at this point. The U.S. is already, extraordinarily consolidated as it is. Cenk Uygur was a low-level gray wolf rat, LMAO. I'm not sure, what is a gray wolf rat? Gray wolf is capitalized. I'm unfamiliar with that. Somebody asked, is Cenk's wolf pack thing just a grift? Who the hell knows with Cenk? I mean, he comes out of Ivy League stuff. That's not to say you can't renounce that and move on. However, it should be noted the vast majority of people coming out of the Ivy League schools are there not to renounce it, but to get as many perks and privileges out of life as they possibly can. You will also come out of institutions like that with an extraordinarily skewed view of how the world works. Basically no idea. You'll even be afraid of poor people and just the concept of poverty. They don't like talking about it. They don't like thinking about it. They don't really like factoring it into any of their decisions. It's the perspective, by and large, of the entrenched capitalist class. But anyway, he comes out of that. That's not to say that you can't renounce it, like I said, but the odds of that are pretty low. And he didn't. He went on to MSNBC, played this role of kind of former Republican. Cenk's story is that he broke with the Republican Party during the Bush-Cheney years due to like the torture scandals, like Abu Ghraib prison. Have you seen that picture of the guy standing on the box with the black shroud draped over him and like electrodes hooked up to him, all that kind of stuff. And the naked human pyramids of prisoners being humiliated and tortured by the U.S. military in Iraq. So he broke with the Republican Party over torture. I mean, I think the fact that it took somebody that long to break with the Republican Party doesn't actually scream progressive to me, but that's my opinion. Anyway, so then he starts playing the role of a progressive, and, really he builds this little media empire, which is full of sleaze. I mean, TYT has always been kind of trash content in the first place. And, he's here now trying to sell you Democrats. And then when the Democrats don't work, does he sell you a left party? No, he doesn't. He sells you Republicans. This is exactly the thing that, he was rightfully criticizing Jimmy Dore for. It's not actually better. It's not actually an alternative. It's just indulging in the dog and pony show that is U.S. electoral politics. Democrat, Republican, and then you got the third largest party, Libertarians, who are just also neoliberals. In fact, they're more fanatical than either Democrats or Republicans about their neoliberalism. They just don't, attain power very often. I mean, there hasn't been a huge need for them except as sort of controlled opposition to scare people off of, quote, third party politics. Which, it's worth mentioning third party. What is that outside of the realm of politics? What does the phrase third party generally connote? It means like an observer, non-participant, a neutral third party. So, I mean, every time that they use that third party, it means like a bystander, basically. So they have you trapped with the language so you can't even think about this stuff in the first place. But anyway, when it does come time to consider what is the, quote, alternative option, the Libertarian Party is right there, trying to give you even more hyper-capitalism, ram it down your throat. So, anyway, U.S., disgusting fucking nightmare. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, the U.S. does not need an NEP, like Soviet Russia had in the very beginning. That's to build up capitalism, to set the stage for the socialist elements to overthrow the capitalist elements in a controlled setting. And U.S. absolutely does not need that at all. There's already we don't have like a huge peasant class. The population is proletarianized. That happened over the last 100 years. If you go back to the Civil War, about 10-15% of the U.S. population was proletarian, wage workers, propertyless. And now it's like the opposite. It's 90%. So no, we're already proletarianized. That's not necessary. The economy is highly developed, capitalist, imperialist, because that's the highest stage of capitalism. That's what we're in. We don't need a NEP. The so-called progressives in the Democratic Party need to ditch the doomerism when it comes to third parties. It's largely what is holding a lot of people back from actually moving left themselves, even if that's literally just a break from the center-right Democratic Party. Yeah, and I think that the thing we need to impress upon people is that building a party or a coalition of parties, hashtag left coalition, is not just about winning elections. In fact, it's not even primarily about winning elections. It is about building a party. It's about building a network of people who are strategizing and participating in class struggle in the many different forms in which it takes place, one of which, but maybe a tenth of which, is electoral struggle. There are definitely some local seats and county seats and maybe even statewide seats that a left coalition could take on and win. Of course, that's going to increase pushback from the other parties. But it is what it is. If you can get them, then get them. As Lenin said, the point of this is not like that is the route to victory. It's to use those seats as a platform for sharpening class consciousness and just advancing the struggle. That's what it's about. But most of these people, they really think that it's just about, we got to, basically go in with the Democrats because they say they're going to increase the minimum wage. And it's like, no, you're really losing sight of the broader struggle there to build an independent left that can actually stand on its own, isn't tailing capital, and can fight for our interests, which are diametrically opposed to the interests that control the Democratic or Republican or Libertarian or Constitution or Alliance or any of these other right-wing parties that are out there. So, yeah. But that's a lot of, like, if you listen to Kyle Kulinski, Secular Talk, that's what he talks about is, a third party you can't win because of winner take all and first past the post. And it's like, forget all that. But see, that's what all these people have built their careers as pundits around electoral politics. And you have to just keep taking your eyes off of class struggle to the extent that these people were even, the SOCDEM gang were even interested in class struggle in the first place. Now with the resurgence of an actual left, channels like this one, they have to adopt some more of that language. You can see that with AOC, whatever. AOC talking about, like, quote, improving material conditions, by which she just means, like, grasping at extremely petty reforms that you might attain by completely sacrificing your independence as, an organized proletarian and just hitching your wagon entirely to a capitalist-dominated party like the Democrats. But yeah, building a party, building a coalition, it's not about just winning elections. It's about building a party. I think that a lot of the discourse needs to be changed around that because it's true. The elections are pretty much sewn up. It's very difficult for the left to win in most places, let alone at the federal level. So, like I said, I think some of those seats would be gettable by a strong left coalition in various areas. But that's not really the main point. The main point is the overall class struggle, building class consciousness, and abolishing capitalism. So anyway, next comment. Cenk created a new channel with the same name as outright nationalist group in Turkey. Yeah, I know that. On top of being an Armenian genocide denier, he was also a low-level gray wolf rat who has created a very strong tool for Western imperialism. His family is even involved in their land ownage with the Grey Wolves, there being claims of their family owning winery and olive farms that also grow and traffic heroin. Well, I haven't heard those claims. I can't really speak to the validity of that. But, thank you for the tip anyway. But, Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of something to say about the Young Turks. They're fucking disgusting. I can't stand them. I've covered a few Young Turk videos in my Hanging with the Sock Dem Gang series that I've done, but I've really grown weary of that series. I did it for about 2 years, and I think I just hit the point where I'm like, enough. Um, like I said, it's gotten worse. Now you got Kyle Kalinske stumping for Joe Biden, so what can you even say at this point? These people are completely lost. I mean, I think Anna Kasparian, maybe the number two person over at TYT, has also become like a crime wave, a panic reactionary, talking about like the criminals running wild in the streets and whatever. So you can see what's happening. These people are trending just rightward more and more, which is what I said in the first place back in 2020. You don't pull these people right. You don't pull the Democrats right. Excuse me. You don't pull them left. They pull you right. So just to make that clear. Because there was all this talk. Oh, we're going to pull Biden left, and Cenk was advocating for that. No, you're not going to do that. Of course, you're not going to do that. They're going to pull you right. They have more money and more organization. They're entrenched. They have a million media contacts. We have to actually build our own thing, make it organized, make it a solid network, create a coalition where people can cooperate from different parties, different organizations on the left in a shared framework that is not just casual, it's actually formal, and we can make decisions as a coalition and stick with them and then hammer out those talking points and change the discussion and create some proletarian leadership for the class struggle. That is happening to some extent, but it's still pretty unorganized at this point. And all of the parties are kind of too small to exert a huge influence on their own. I do think that coalition is called for. So I wonder how long Kalinske will take to follow suit with Cenk being a knockoff brand Cenk Uygur. Yeah, especially I haven't really watched him at all, even for commentary purposes in the last year or two. But I've mentioned it in videos before, and people have said in the comments that they can't unsee it. That Kalinske is doing a running Cenk impression. Kalinske basically said that his inspirations were roughly 50% Bill Maher and 50% Cenk Uygur. It makes you want to vomit just thinking about it. But yes, he has done a running Cenk Uygur impression for, even up to last year or so. He was just flat out aping Cenk. So that's my question for Cenk. Next comment says, how is the Republican going to solve homelessness in California if the real estate industry is one of the Republicans' top donors? Obviously, homelessness is big business and real estate profits by keeping people out of homes, creating scarcity, and driving up prices. Yeah, you can see this. I did a video on Michael Schellenberger, who's an absolute piece of shit libertarian in California. I think he's run for governor there. And he is trying to basically just institutionalize and lock up everybody who has fallen into homelessness, in California on behalf of wealthy people who don't want to look at the consequences of the system that they own and control and that they benefit from. But yeah, look that up. Schellenberger, SCH. Actually, I don't even know if it's a CH. But he appeared on the Joe Rogan show, and then I read some Schellenberger articles and criticized how he was just factually incorrect on basically every point about the housing crisis and homelessness. He tries to make homelessness out to be a personal failing due to, a variety of things, but including mental illness and drug addiction. Homelessness is a lack of housing. That's what it is. And you look around now at, it's going to vary from place to place, but by and large, oh, hey, do you want to buy a, constructed in 1982 boomer house that's 40 years old, falling apart? Yeah, that'll be $500,000, please. These things should be selling for like 150,000, 200,000, but they're going for ridiculous amounts of money. That's the situation that we're in. People can't afford it. Apartments are very similar. And nothing is being done about this by either Democrats or Republicans. Libertarian solutions would be even worse. What we're seeing is corporations, as I touched on in that video. There's a playlist on the channel also about the housing crisis. You can find the Schellenberger video there and some other videos about the housing crisis as well. But there's corporations buying up single family houses and then like renting them out at a profit. So the whole idea of like, they're just literally all the houses that you could buy, they're buying them up first because they have billions of dollars at their disposal. So the idea of owning a house is becoming impossible. You're just going to be like living in this corporate, feudal, neo-feudalist reality. All right. Well, Kyle at least is genuine when Cenk's entire career stems from a grift. Literally, did you? I mean, well, this comment is older, but no, Kyle based his career off of Cenk's career, which stems from a grift. So, no, it's not really much better, actually. And if anything, Kalinsky's analysis has gotten worse over time, not better. I think I've said this before, but it for me became kind of the final word in my mind on this subject was when Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball or I guess formerly of the Hills Rising, God, what a just toxic cesspool the entire media sphere around Hills Rising is. But talk about people going in circles. Brianna Joy Gray, all these people. But anyway, when Kalinske and Crystal Ball got together as a romantic couple, somebody just retweeted the picture with "Today's a huge day for people whose entire political education consisted of reading Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent." To me, that's kind of the final word in it. They're just adrift. There's no profit incentive to help the homeless. Only socialist programs will help them. Well, people who don't have houses are homeless, and what people who are homeless need is houses. So, yeah, you need a system where housing is decommodified, basically. And that's not going to happen in capitalism. You need to decommodify things like food and housing and other basic essentials, water, clean water. This is a giant crisis right now. Actually, if you look at what's going on with indigenous people, Native Americans in the United States, clean water, gigantic problem, lacking in almost every area. That plus literal, people who live on tribal lands near water, the land is shrinking, the water is rising due to climate change, all kinds of problems. But yeah, all that needs to be decommodified and not treated through the quote free market. Greenwald has been a longtime anti-communist through and through, even being buddy-buddy with Alex Jones. He's a libertarian. Again, slime, just scum. And, this is libertarians. They'll occasionally make a point you can agree with on a, quote, civil libertarian basis about people having civil rights. But then they support economic libertarianism, just unrestrained capitalism, which completely undermines the basis for anyone having a dignified life and exercising those rights in a realistic way. Because what it takes to have a decent life in a society where everything has a price tag is money. And the libertarian system is just, unrestrained neoliberalism. And it leads to a system where the vast majority of people have very little money, barely enough to subsist, and huge inequality with a tiny owning class of capitalists who have basically all the wealth. What can you really do in that system, where you have civil rights on paper but no economic rights to any of the stuff that has been commodified and, had a price tag put on it? Yeah, Nick from Socialist MMA doesn't know anything about Marxism. I mean, they're the people having on. I did a couple of videos. They're buddy with Jimmy Dore, and having Jackson Hinkle on to talk about hashtag MAGA communism. It's a fucking joke. It's a joke. Yes, it is fascist because they're funneling would-be revolutionary energy into the right. Oh, is Socialist MMA an offshoot of Midwestern Marx? I understood that Midwestern Marx also went the Patsock reactionary chauvinist route, so that's not surprising. Did I watch the Loner Box attack on Poly People? No, I don't really watch most of these streamers, honestly. I saw the thing that Bad Empanada made about Loner Box. Bad Empanada is about as close as I get to all that streamer drama. He filters some of, so I'll watch some of his political stuff, and he throws in some of the Twitch streamer drama stuff. And so, I'll get a little bit of it secondhand there. But let me just say that after watching those summaries, it left me with absolutely zero desire to go any deeper into it. Yeah, not real appealing. Would it make a good Hanging with the Sock Dems episode? Maybe. Honestly, the last time I did that Jimmy Dore one, like a few weeks, 3 weeks ago, I like almost didn't stream the next week. It takes so much out of me. I know that they're popular and people like those criticisms, but I think I've moved on to a point. Smaller channels want to do that stuff. Like, I'm telling you right now, I have very limited energy for that. As I've moved on to better and better understandings of Marxist concepts, it's opened a lot more research questions for me that I think are stuff I wouldn't have been able to tackle a few years ago, and so I'm moving on into that. I know people like the Hanging with the Sock Dem Gang stuff, but it's so it's both that my tolerance has decreased for it, but it's also that stuff, as I was saying, has objectively gotten worse. You now got Kyle Kalinske, you know, promoting Biden, even if in a sort of backhanded way, but he still is. Biden's been in office for 2 years. He's done horrible things. He's shut down the collective pandemic response, for one. He's continued the wars. There's been no fundamental change of anything under Biden at all. Nothing at all. So it's all continuity. Hi, I tweeted at you a couple of days ago about if you would be interested in having other people volunteer their time in narrating theory for the channel. No, I mean, if you want to put stuff up on your channel, that's fine. In fact, I was just recently going through the Revolution and Counter-Revolution in Germany, 1852 Engels audiobook, which we did as a community project. There's still 3 chapters missing, so I'm going to probably just record those myself. But no, I would like to see more people doing those channels, put the stuff online, and if you take a liking to it, I don't think everybody is going to wind up spending as much time on it as I do or some of the other channels like this do. But you might find that you're good at it and you like it and you want to stick with it, and we could use more channel. It's probably like for every 25 people who put an audiobook up, 1 or 2 will become sort of a regular poster and extend that analysis out. But yeah, give it a try. So yeah, right now, anyway, no, the channel is just sort of, my content. So it's kind of easier that way right now. Then again, we've only been doing this for 2.5 years, so there's still room for growth. We'll see what happens down the line, but not right now. I didn't see your tweet though, by the way. Grey Wolf is a NATO created. This is actually, you know what? I do remember this now. Grey Wolf is a NATO created armament during CIA Operation Gladio that does terrorist trafficking like HTS, ISIS, Al Qaeda, etc., and doing heroin trafficking. Basically, Gladio explains in remarkable detail the Soviet Afghan wars to 9/11 to the Xinjiang Uyghur ETIM members. Yeah, the U.S. has played a large hand in creating the enemies that it uses as pretexts for its various invasions and expansions and things that it does in the name of expanding imperialist influence, getting into Afghanistan for the minerals, for the pipeline, getting into everywhere for the oil, etc. And if that means that they've got to fund and help along some enemy of the weak terrorist groups to do it, then they will do that, and that's been shown over and over again. It's also useful for using those reactionary fundamentalist groups against any leftist movements that might organically arise. So it's a lot of that stuff is in service of imperialism. Absolutely. I mean, that was what Gladio was all about. We put up on the channel the BBC Gladio 3-hour special. If you look that up, you'll find it at Socialism for All, where there's a lot of detail. Also, Bestie Marks, who is now linked on the featured channels tab at S4A, has videos on Gladio and Italian fascism and what Italian fascism did after World War II, which is it didn't just go up in a puff of smoke. It stuck around, and it was used by CIA and NATO intelligence as part of anti-communist efforts. So, yeah. Okay, so somebody differentiating between Cenk's American history and his Turkish history. I really don't know anything about Cenk's Turkish history, so his political analysis is bad enough. I haven't even gotten beyond that. Commenting on the Ivy League stuff, that sentiment is definitely mostly true, but recently participated in the Fossil Free Penn event, and a lot of the Penn students involved were pretty militant. We're fighting for, among other things, secure housing for people in the community around the university. If that will stick around after they graduate remains to be seen. Yeah, after they get a job at Daddy's company, we will see. And that's not to say we don't want, all the allies we can get, but again, how deep is that commitment? How much of it is just another extracurricular for their resume to get hired at some, large corporation that has interest in greenwashing or, social justice, sort of PR, trying to give the veneer of like a socially conscious image to their corporation. I'm sure that some of those people could become radical, drop out of corporate America, and could come, join us in actual left organizations. I have a feeling many won't. And, people who come from backgrounds of tons of privilege often make really shitty allies, making it all about themselves, etc. So, yeah, there's definitely caveats there. For people who really want to drop out of all of that, and that's great, and who actually want to be effective class traders, I will just say, if you grew up rich and you grew up in sort of that Ivy League blue-blooded world, you've got a lot of learning to do. And if you really want to be an effective class trader, you've got to understand that you have probably a couple of decades of unlearning to do before you can really be effective. But stick with it if you do. Just don't go around telling everybody else what to do when you're coming from that perspective. You got to go out and get an experience and listen to people who are not coming from that background. And again, not just as an extracurricular exercise to build your resume. So some discussions of non-Democrat, non-Republican parties, and yeah, they're probably not going to get anywhere in elections, even though more people agree with those parties on policy than they do with the Democrats or Republicans, and that should tell you a lot about the electoral system in the United States. Again, we need to keep leaning on these issues, not hiding from them in the Democratic Party. People go into the Democratic Party to hide from the reality that there is no democracy. But that's not useful for sharpening class consciousness. It's going to dampen down class consciousness. We want to do the opposite. So we want to make our stand separately from capital, against capital, not sort of, hiding behind it like a, 3-year-old behind their mother's dress peeking out at this scary stranger. We need to go out there and confront things as they are. Yeah, AOC said material conditions because it'd be like, oh yeah, we'll support the Dems to improve material conditions get minimum wage or whatever. This was back in 2018, 2019, when, before she kind of clammed up. I rarely ever see stuff about AOC anymore. I mean, ever. Have I read The Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton? No, is she one of the MMT people? Just talk to your neighbors and friends, loved ones first. If each of us radicalizes one person in their lives, that's already a big deal. Then organize and move on from there. I agree. Just understand that a lot of your neighbors and friends and loved ones are, a lot of people go with the flow. Few people are leaders, willing to be the first to do something. And also few people are what you could call first followers, people who will follow be the first person to follow a leader without a big group of people already following them. A lot of people really go with the flow, don't like sticking out, and will not jump into a movement until it's very big already, until it already has lots of followers. So, people being leaders, doing their own thing, people being followers who go after them. First followers who go after the leaders simply because they had a good idea. This is rare because there's a lot of social pressure to go with the flow, stick with the established idea, and there's, basically everybody is made into some level of enforcer of the existing status quo and, enlisted in the general capitalist effort to browbeat people into just agreeing with going along with some variation of the dominant thing and not rocking the boat. So understand, that also includes your neighbors and friends and loved ones. If you can get a leader or, a first follower, somebody who actually can evaluate ideas critically and doesn't care so much about whether or not they're already hugely popular, then that's great. But do understand these people are in the minority. But yeah, we do have to start somewhere. So we can't be afraid to have people disagree with us at first. Just keep moving until you find the people who, are more likely, that are actually receptive. Yes, communism will win. To be honest, and there is more chat, but I may come back to it. Coming off of the stream that we did on Tuesday, number 57, featuring the work of Ted Reese and based on the work of Henrik Grossman, some of that stuff to me, it helped me to truly envision the end of capitalism, the system that we know, all the private ownership, etc. It helped me to envision that maybe better than many other things, which have happened in other countries, other times and places. So, jumping off of that, I will come back to the chat, and there's a good question about radicalizing people without proselytizing or sounding like you're trying to, quote, convince them of something. People often don't like to be, manipulated or whatever. We'll come back to that in a minute. But let me jump off of that and do the couple of follow-up stories that I had pulled on some of the Looming crash here. So we got up the one that I saved about Japan. This is short. So these are posts from talkmarkets.com. Headline here, and these aren't socialists, but it's worth reading the analysis. Forget the UK. Have you seen what's happening in Japan? This is by Graham Summers of Gains, Pains, and Capital, Thursday, October 13. And another country is losing control of its financial system. We've already assessed the fact that the financial system of the UK is in the process of imploding. The British pound and yields on British government bonds have collapsed in the last month, resulting in the country's central bank, the Bank of England, launching an emergency unlimited quantitative easing program. The last time that the Bank of England was forced to do this was during the pandemic crash in March 2020. We're now over 2 years out from that, and the BOE just had to launch another emergency QE program because the financial system is so addicted to central bank interventions that the BOE can't even begin to shrink its balance sheet without triggering a currency or bond crisis. Helpful hint here. When you hear people referring to central bank, this is usually libertarians who want like a decentralized system like what existed prior to the Federal Reserve in the 19-teens in the United States. What did we have before that? We had constant, quote, banking panics, and this would not give actually any more stability to the system at all. So libertarianism, as we're discussing before, is a false solution, a solution worse than the disease. And so don't listen to that. But yeah, anytime you're seeing central bank, suspect libertarian until proven otherwise, which is libertarians. We call them lolberts for a reason, laugh out loud, because they are a joke. That said, they do spend a lot of time reading financial charts. They don't always come up with the right, analysis of what we should do instead. But, so anyway, take it for what it's worth. Continuing. Bear in mind, we're not talking about Uganda or some other emerging market here. We're talking about the fifth largest economy in the world and one of the major currencies for trade, the British pound. However, the UK's problems pale in comparison to those of Japan. The Japanese yen is collapsing, falling to the lowest daily levels since the early 90s. And by the way, I had not heard about this. The situation became so dire in late September that the Bank of Japan, BOJ, was forced to intervene to buy its own currency for the first time since 1998, so that was 24 years. The yen bounced for one day and then rolled over to new lows, so the intervention did not really work. Yes, we've reached the point at which a major central bank announces that it will be intervening directly in its currency market, and the impact lasts one day. See for yourself. So there's the chart. And this is as of about a week and a half ago. As I keep stating, the Great Crisis, the one to which 2008 was just a warm-up, has finally arrived. They're saying this is like happening now and the effects are right around the corner. In 2008, entire banks went bust. In 2022, entire countries will do so. So I got two other short ones here. Let's go on to those. The next one is this one. Where to put it? What happens to stocks when the fifth largest economy in the world goes bust? Again, by Graham Summers. One of the central theses of my best-selling book, The Everything Bubble, is that once a central bank embarks on a path of extraordinary monetary easing, it can never escape. The Bank of England is now finding this out the hard way. Back in September, it had planned on shrinking its balance sheet via a process called quantitative tightening. So obviously the opposite of quantitative easing. I don't know why I keep adding more ENs. My brain wants an extra syllable. Then the new government introduced more fiscal easing. The British pound collapsed and the yields on British government bonds exploded higher. So we can see the charts here. And that is quite a dramatic, catastrophic drop there. The BOE was forced to abandon all plans on quantitative tightening and instead introduced emergency, unlimited quantitative easing to try and calm the markets. The new plan was to provide quantitative easing for a few weeks until things calmed down. In fact, this, quote, temporary quantitative easing was supposed to end October 14. However, the BOE was forced to provide additional measures, easing measures, to make sure that things remain calm. So quantitative easing is ending, but easing is not. And the BOE claims that it will once again try to start quantitative tightening on November 1st. Good luck with that. The pound is already rolling over again. As I keep stating, the Great Crisis, the one to which 2008 was a warm-up, has finally arrived. In 2008, entire banks went bust. In 2022, entire countries will do so. The UK is the fifth largest economy in the world, and by the look of things, it will be the first to go bust. It won't be the last. Japan, Europe, and ultimately the US will experience debt crises in the coming months. One more quickie article from the same source. I just want to mention, when we look at all the people cheering on multipolarity as just an unlimited inherent good, actually this may be the prelude to, greater and greater conflicts between large advanced capitalist, i.e. imperialist powers. So in the unipolar era, when the United States was, ruled the roost exclusively, the United States went around meddling in, overthrowing, and murdering people and destroying infrastructure, so also leading to social murder, because you don't have infrastructure, you can't take care of things like education and hospitals and roads and everything else. That's what you had during the unipolar era. The U.S. just went around in the name of the war on terror, doing whatever it wanted, overthrowing governments, invading countries. Now in the multipolar era, that gets a bit more difficult because there is another big capitalist power on the block again. But then there's the risk of them directly fighting with each other, which is already the amount of aid that's going on with NATO, the U.S. in Ukraine. I mean, they're directly giving Ukraine weapons. Also, Ukrainian soldiers, 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers are training in the UK and then being shipped back to Ukraine to fight. So this is a very collaborative effort so far. How long before it really does become a wider war with multiple fronts, so on and so forth. So put it this way, Does world capitalism getting massively unstable raise the odds of war, which means untold suffering for working people? Obviously the most vulnerable suffer the most consequences. The rich can buy their way out of more of the consequences. Does it, obviously it raises the odds of that. So this is definitely far from unlimited good. It's really just a change. It's not better. Anyway, continuing, this is from earlier in the month, October 6th. Stocks are in la-la land just like they were right before Lehman Brothers. So Lehman Brothers blew up. It was part of the 2008 crash, and they're calling that we're back there again. So talking about the stock market, let's talk about market structure. The S&P 500 is extremely weighted towards tech stocks. Tech is the largest sector by weighting. It is in fact larger than the weighting of the second and third largest sectors combined. So that would be healthcare and consumer discretionary. Those add up to 25.5%. Technology is 27.3%. Okay. Put another way, the S&P 500 is in fact largely a proxy for the tech sector. It's more than a quarter of it. Now, tech stocks are highly sensitive to long-term rates. You can see this clearly in the below chart, in which the tech sector ETF, XLK, closely follows the price movements of the long treasury ETF, TLT, albeit with greater volatility. Indeed. Where were we? Moving on to the next slide here. I mention all of this because the long treasury ETF, TLT, is rolling over again. This suggests that the current rally in stocks is on borrowed time. Enjoy it while it lasts. At the end of the day, the stock market can rally all it wants, but it will be in vain. Why? Because the Great Crisis, and this is sort of their tagline again, the one to which 2008 was just a warm-up, has finally arrived. Take a look at what's happening with the British pound, 30-year lows dropping like a stone, and then recapping the Japan situation again. So wanted to just point this out. These were other links obtained off of Ted Reese's Twitter, whose work we covered in the last thing. All right, so let's go back to the chat for a minute, just to catch up with where we were there. And then, I don't know, in about 15 minutes, we'll probably get into the COVID stuff, then do a chat and close out the stream. All right. Yeah, so any advice on how to radicalize without sounding like you're trying to convince them of something? So any sort of effective communication like that is more listening than talking. Shoot for 80% listening, 20% talking. Ask people what's bothering them. Agitation is about drawing out people's problems and getting them to become more conscious of what it is that's bothering them, rather than having them ignore it, push it away, wish it away, and just basically not give it attention. So you want to give it attention. Obviously, don't be like incredibly obvious, but be creative, find a way to bring it up, or if somebody's talking about something, ask them to elaborate. But yeah, I mean, you can read some of the organizational guides that we have from the IWW, and there's other organizing guides that I put up on the channel, which are very sort of grassroots oriented. But yeah, you want to shoot for 80% listening, 20% talking. That alone is not, trying to convince them of something, but asking them a lot of questions and getting them to talk, because a lot of times people already know the answers to these things, but they don't want to admit it. But, ask them questions that kind of lead them in the direction of, it's talking about capitalism and the rich versus people who don't own property and things like that. Again, a lot of times people do know this stuff, but they're not encouraged to think about it. They're not encouraged to elaborate. They're not encouraged to draw it out. But you can be that person who sort of encourages them to think constructively about what is causing the problems in their life, how does it come from the economic system. So agitate, educate, and finally organize. It doesn't necessarily all happen in the same conversation. But just listening to people. Most people don't really listen to other people's problems, especially when they have to do with money. There's kind of a huge taboo about talking about money in the first place. So, yeah, just listening to people's problems so that they don't have to hide it, that can be hugely refreshing to people in and of itself. Hopefully, that's some food for thought for you. Next comment. Maybe the only good guy from the Sockdam gang was Michael Brooks. He seemed like the only principled person in that rat nest, RIP. Yeah, I never really listened to much of him. I know he was kind of close with Sam Cedar, who not impressed with. I hear that often about Brooks, and yeah, he died before I really had a chance to check him out one way or the other. Now that he is gone, I haven't felt like it's quite as relevant. So, history moves on. I haven't, it's not something that's as likely to generate an ongoing current dialogue. Let's put it that way. I've heard people say that. I know he was kind of a big fan of Richard Wolff, but I don't know. Yeah, sectarianism is a. So, Cloud Corp, you posted sort of an ironic comment. So, the comment is I have doubts about a left coalition here in the U.S. A lot of the biggest parties here are too sectarian. I could definitely see something like that happening in the U.K., though, which is interesting because I think a lot of the UK left is Marxist, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, I meant Trotskyist. Um, Trots are kind of known for their sectarianism. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think we have anything to lose in attempting to, form a left coalition. Again, I don't think that any of the parties are big enough and or ever will be big enough on their own to do something. I don't also think that we have the party that's going to be our party. We have, CPUSA, which is, quote, the Communist Party of the United States. The whatever process they're using to elect their leadership is not working. They've had extraordinarily revisionist, tailist leadership for a very long time. And even though most of the rank and file are, people who listen to this channel, I communicate with regularly, and they're always saying we have no idea how or why the national leadership is saying the kind of stuff that they do. But anyway, yeah, I don't think we have the party that we're going to need moving forward. I think it would probably emerge out of a left coalition. It would include some entire parties merging into it. Some splinters of existing parties would merge into it. And, some entirely newly developed stuff as well. But again, I think we have nothing to lose and everything to gain by attempting to start it. You can. I don't share your concern about the sectarianism. I don't. Sectarianism by definition is people who do not have a fundamental conflict of interest yet won't work with each other. It's the opposite of opportunism, which is people who do have a fundamental conflict of interest and yet will work with each other anyway. This is like, the proletariat joining forces with the bourgeoisie under most circumstances. Should not be doing that. So, yeah, that's, opportunism versus sectarianism. They're sort of opposites. Don't be sectarian. But yeah, I guess I have a bit more faith in the U.S. left than that. I don't know how many people are as dedicated to their sect or their party or whatever. And again, in a coalition, the parties would retain their independence, their own separate existence. But they would come together for purposes of the coalition in a way that, every party or group or organization would, have a certain amount of votes, however it was decided. So I'm not sure that the sectarianism is as deep as you think. B, I think you could still make a coalition that works around that sectarianism. The way things are going, BlackRock is going to own pretty much every house in the U.S. after the next housing crash, thanks to the sheer amount of capital they accumulated. Yeah, this is the thing. Next time housing prices come down, buy a fucking house before a corporation does. Because they got billions and you have thousands, and they can just buy up entire towns without even feeling it financially. And that's what they're going to do. And then they're going to turn around, rent it to you under some kind of Airbnb, ultra precarious, you have no renter's rights kind of situation. That's been the trend for like the last 10, 15 years. It needs to be stopped. Various cities have tried to push back on that because, it's one thing to have like, an Airbnb situation, but people are using it for like actual housing, not just for vacationing or traveling or visiting somewhere for an extended stay. All of this stuff, again, it's housing. You can't fuck around with that as a commodity. You got to decommodify it. That's the bottom line. But yeah, this is the situation we've been trending towards. It's interesting to see some cities trying to take on things like Airbnb and regulate it more stringently, and the fight that they get. Because again, real estate, I think it's the number four biggest contributor to both Democrats and Republicans. Huge, huge, amount of money coming in from there to sway the politicians. Kyle Kalinske was a poli-sci major, if I remember correctly, but doesn't know or mention Marx. I think that Kalinski's position on Marx was, I read a little bit of Marx once and I didn't agree with it. Sorry, it's not going to cut it. And, again, he either becomes current, like you see Humanist Report, who I did a couple of response videos to, and actually the videos I chose, I criticized, I came away with a much more favorable review than I do of most. He blocked me anyway for it. I was like, I didn't even say anything bad about you. It's sad. But yeah, I think he's sort of going in more of a faux Marxist direction, which they're going to have to do to stay current. Otherwise, there's no alternative but to get swallowed up in the Biden sphere. So we'll see what happens with each of them. What are they teaching over there in their poli-sci courses? Probably not a lot of Marx. If you go to like a sociology program, or maybe if you have a very forward-thinking economics teacher, you can maybe study some Marx. I mean, you're more likely in sociology than in econ, but you can maybe find, do some papers on Marx or something like that, or Lenin. What are my thoughts on shorter form content? Is Marxism better long form in your opinion? I don't know. I mean, so I've been doing these live streams that are like 2 hours long, and then there's multiple segments within them. I really haven't had the time to break them up right now, and it is what it is. Also, I don't do them in hard and fast segments either, so breaking them up can be a bit challenging in the first place, because we weave back and forth between topics over the course of the stream. I get that not everybody's going to be listening to a 2 hour thing. This is what's working for me right now. I used to make separate videos on every topic, kind of a thing. Where I actually started breaking out of that was doing COVID, where I would do multiple articles or studies in a single thing, and it kind of came out of that. But yeah, I mean, as of right now, if you want single topic videos, a lot of the channels that I've linked to, like Marxist Paul or Politsturm or the Marxist Project, they do specific essays on specific topics. I still do that once in a while, but I'm more likely to do that, in conjunction with an audiobook, or we'll elaborate on it and have a discussion in the stream. So that's what I'm doing right now. I think that it is, a lot of the topics in Marxism are, they're not like they're not unlearnable, they're not impossibly complex, but trying to sum them up in a bumper sticker, it can be pretty difficult. And then you get a lot of people just coming away with kind of a poor understanding of what's being said. So I do think discussions like this are probably a better way to explore it over the long term. That said, shorter form content can probably get people started, but they really should consider their education as just being that of a beginner at that stage. And I'm not sure that they always come away. Sometimes they'll watch, half a dozen videos on Marxism 101 and think, I've got it, I'm a Marxist now. No, and actually I think a really good example of that is one of the recent audiobooks that I did, The 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte by Karl Marx. That, if you want to understand contradictions in politics, I think that is such a good work for illustrating how, in the situations that Marx was describing in France, literally nothing was simple. It was this contrasted with that. And Marx is highlighting a lot of it in that work for the purposes of irony, I guess. Like sort of there's like a theme of sort of ironic turnarounds and well, it's that thing about history. First as farce, then as tragedy, but sort of highlighting that sort of farcical turnaround and the revisiting of a concept from earlier in history, but in a more perverse or like deformed format the second time around. But he goes into a lot of, comparing and contrasting in that it's just not simple stuff. If you think that you're going to be a Marxist and then, just have an understanding of the world that is summable on a bumper sticker or in a tweet, it's not really going to work that way. Or you'd have to be an extraordinary poet, or poster as we call them now, to be able to sum it up in that way. So I think in general, discussions are probably better because, you're talking about dialectical materialism. It's the back and forth interplay of, contradictions, which are just opposing forces that stimulate change. But it's not black and white, and it's not, it's not as neat and tidy as a lot of people like it to be. So, I think that over the course of having a lot of discussion and discourse within the movement, you can get to a point where, there's sort of side A and side B, and then you can really comment in a more concise way. But I think that there's a lot of discussion before you get up to that point. Yeah, so somebody's saying I would start a channel. I don't think I'd be able to do the commentary as well as I do. I mean, I didn't do the commentary as well as I do now when I started 2.5 years ago. And I am currently not doing the commentary as well as I will be doing it another 2.5 years from now. We all have a learning curve. It's just a question of when you become good enough to start. When you become good enough to say something. Where I started this channel, it was me being really tired of, it was watching the 2015, 2016 sort of reemergence of the left after Occupy Wall Street in the form of the Bernie Sanders campaign, listening to a lot of those Sock Dem Gang people with their sort of daily horse race coverage, and monitoring the effects of the Bernie Sanders movement, which I was involved in. I would always explain to people, I'm definitely to the left of Bernie Sanders, but I think that this was a positive development in U.S. politics because rarely is there sort of a lightning rod like this where leftists can come out of the woodwork and like get active again. I was seeing people who hadn't been involved in politics in any way for 40 years coming back out and trying to make some kind of a stand, some kind of a statement. And, after listening to commentary on that for several years, I was like, I have more to say than this, and I think it's time to just get back into the Marxism because the left has got to go hard left. This just isn't sufficient. And I took it from there, and we've done a lot of readings together on the channel. People have been following since the beginning or near the beginning. Like, we've done a lot of readings, and we've had a lot of discussions, and we've analyzed a lot of current events, and it's through that you get better at it. So, yeah, and there's another comment. Everyone has to start somewhere, comrade. Don't doubt yourself, and be willing to correct mistaken ideas if criticized on them. If you're not an opportunist or grifter, I'm sure it would still help. At the bare minimum, you will be quantitatively adding to the efforts of left media, leading to a qualitative shift. I agree with that comment. Question, I may bring this up later, but just in case, any word on the Haiti situation about the potential or even more likely looming invasion from the U.S. and its allies? I know as much as you do. I tweeted about it just in an offhand way. I joked that I was going to put up a Haiti lawn sign and then tell lib neighbors that the Russia was going to be invading Haiti to get some support for it. But I mean, no, I know as much as anybody else does. Obviously, the U.S. invading places is never for good reasons. Actually, I mentioned Bad Empanada before. He's got like a 22, 23-minute video on it. I'd just say go watch that. I don't feel I can add anything beyond what he already said so far. What in the world is this comment about? Shut the fuck up, little bitch. The Saudis kick Biden ass every month. I don't know. What what the hell you're talking about, but have a timeout, friend. You know, go take a nap. Um, yeah, thank you. And you remember, don't feed the trolls. It's only going to clog up the chat and make the discussion more difficult for everybody, especially me. Yeah, I don't even know where that was coming from. Capital is a monster text. How long will it take? It took me 3 years stopping and starting again. Will I be reading and recording shorter things at the same time? Probably, although when we get into that, which will not be long, it'll be before the end of the year. I'll probably be starting it by December. The plan there, I've already done chapter 1. We're going to take it chapter by chapter. So each video is probably going to be 1 to 2 hours, and there are many chapters. We will do, 1 to 2 hours per chapter. That's sort of what I have in mind, is just breaking it down piece by piece, and then I will glue it together into one long video for people who want the whole thing in one 20-hour video or whatever it's going to be. We will do all 3 volumes of Capital as well, because I do think, like those economics articles we just read, that's some of the bare bones basic current events in the world of economics, but obviously there's no Marxist analysis behind that. We do need to increase the number of Marxist economists out there, and you got to start somewhere with that. So anyway, yeah, we'll be going chapter by chapter. Chapter 1, the commodity, is already up on the channel if you want a preview of how I'll be handling it. Regarding Haiti, do you know much about Jimmy Cherizier? No, I do not. U.S. media is painting him as an evil, massacring gang leader, but he seems to be a legit revolutionary who's a real threat to empire. Well, so that's my understanding. No, I'll look him up, though. My understanding of what's going on is there's basically a non-elected, unpopular government, and there's a lot of protests, and they're trying to call the U.S. in to squash the protests. So, not good. Okay. Good suggestion on people. I look for people who are willing to borrow my books, and I go from there. So using books as a starter, as an opener to having discussions with people, sort of creating a book club, not formally, but other people who've read the same stuff who can discuss it with you. That's decent. Yeah, Capital is, just even listening to the first chapter, it can be kind of painful. It's pretty repetitive, and the average person, it's going to be so dry for the average person, especially if you have no prior understanding of Marx. It's going to be a very difficult read. It says we have a troll in the chat. Any mods? I saw one troll post one thing and I got rid of them, so. The Japan thing is interesting because of a declining birth rate. I've heard that capitalism can't succeed where there's no population growth. Empire can rely on dominating new peoples, so falling birth rate in the imperial core wouldn't matter as much. But what do you make of a birth strike? As capitalists, are capitalists afraid of global birth rate shortages? Elon Musk is openly very concerned. So they, yeah, I was commenting on this recently. When there are declining birth rates in the USA and EU, particularly of white people, then it's a, quote, birth rate crisis. When there is lots of population growth happening in purposely underdeveloped countries, then that is, quote, an overpopulation crisis, which is largely a concentration of people in megacities due to capitalism crisis. People come in off the land. They can no longer make a living off the land due to capitalism. They move into the cities in search of wage work and then live in oftentimes really hellish, cramped conditions. And there's tons and tons of people living in way too small of a space. So, the capitalist discourse and discussion, what you're going to hear them saying about population rates is obviously very, very skewed and couched in racism and first worldism, the chauvinism of the imperial core countries. Elon Musk is openly very concerned. Yeah, I'm not sure about a birth strike. This is really, up to people. But the bottom line for me is don't be swayed by it. Make the choices that you want to make as far as having children or not. People get sucked into these like trad wife, trad life things of like we're gonna have a dozen kids to perpetuate the white race or whatever. Obviously, these people are just hook, line, and sinker in on a white supremacist settler colonial project, and they're not doing it for sort of any just the insanity of that. Words fail me, but hello everyone. Fingers crossed for Brazil that has a chance to sack Bolsonaro on next Sunday. Yes, definitely. Bolsonaro is there's nothing good about. Also, though, what I saw about when Bolsonaro was elected the first time, it was just straight up split by income. Like everybody in the upper 50% income bracket voted for Bolsonaro overwhelmingly, and then everybody in the poorer bracket voted against. So, yeah. Is this crisis being accelerated or made more severe by the recent sanctions on Russia and China, or was this degree of crisis simply inevitable, regardless as global capitalism collapses? Definitely inevitable. I mean, whether it was inevitable and accelerated, off the top of my head, I can't attempt that analysis. But yeah, I mean, since 2008, nothing fundamentally changed. So that it's inevitable for that reason. That all the problems underlying that. I mean, they did the Dodd-Frank Act in the United States. Fundamentally, though, this did not correct the problem at all. And so it was a matter of time before the problem just built back up again, and we went into another cyclical crash. So is it made more severe by the recent sanctions? I think that they're getting tenser and more competitive, and if they can, sure the U.S. and EU see Russia as if they can defeat them. They're competing over cheap resources, whether it's labor or oil or whatever else. They need to keep expanding. They need more and more, and that's on both sides. The U.S. and EU need to keep expanding, and Russia, which is a separate faction at this point, although there's of course overlap because there are global companies, large companies that are active in Russia as well. I mean, they are also trying to expand, and they're in competition with each other. So to that extent, there is a shrinking field for each to expand into when they're competing over, the U.S. for the last 20 years, since Bush and Cheney did the whole war on terror under the guise of, it's terrorism, but no, it's a giant resource grab, war for oil and minerals and everything else. Now that it's not just the U.S. going around raiding countries anymore, there's actually, well, I mean, it still is that. But now that there's somebody else has entered the chat as far as a competitor to them, things are getting tighter. So, yeah, I mean, both. The U.S. is trying to, while it is still on top, leverage its top dog status to gain every advantage it possibly can in this upcoming crisis. And, this is normal capitalist behavior. It's exactly what you would expect from any capitalist. The U.S. is not any special kind of evil. It's evil, but it's not any special. It's no more evil than any large capitalist country would be. This is just the logic. It's self-interested capitalism, which is the only kind. And this is how they behave. So, yeah. U.S. is going to cannibalize UK economy. We'll probably see that more and more of just, the mergers. Things just get eaten up, and whoever winds up with the most resources at any given time is going to use those resources to take over people in a vulnerable state until there's just sort of one mass at the end. Or if there are two who end up at a roughly comparable size and they're unable to peacefully work out that distribution. The nature of capitalism is competition. So you get two large forces that are in an expansionist imperialist mode, which is capitalism. Now, let's just pause right there for a second. How do we, the working class, stop this? The answer is socialist revolution. That's really the only way to stop it, because, things can go either one way. It can either go back to being unipolar, and the United States and its allies are going to swallow up everything else until that is global and complete, or another large center which stays separate from that but is of comparable size and comparable strength, swallows up a lot of areas in its orbit, and then the two resultant imperialist powers, or maybe three, or maybe four if there winds up being four, I don't know if there would be, they wind up having a giant fight to see who is ultimately top dog. But capitalism doesn't just settle out with, it's inherently a competitive system, and ruthlessly so, and war is just business by, continuation of business by other means, more violent means. Capitalism doesn't just sort of peacefully coexist. It can't, by its just the logic of how it works. So peace for capitalism is when there is no competitor and it just keeps swallowing up more and more things basically unopposed. Now, the force that's always in opposition to this is the proletariat, and that exists in every country. So we have to move away from this campus thing of thinking about, national conflicts and things like that. We have to put the focus back on class conflict. That's really the only way that we can stop this, whether it's in a unipolar world or whether it's in a multipolar world. So, like I said, we're either, there's some emerging multipolarity, I was going to say. There's some emerging multipolar capitalism happening now. Okay, whether that is temporary and the U.S. swallows up Russia and its allies, or whether the multipolarity lasts for a while longer and the opponents or adversaries of the U.S. get stronger and they're able to hold their own. Either way, capitalism is going to keep going with the exploitation of the working class. That's how all of this works. And, and so there will always be that struggle. So we got to pull out of that campism and put the focus again back on class struggle. But I did also want to highlight, we have an audio book up on the channel of Kautsky's theory of ultra-imperialism and then Lenin's criticisms of it. So Karl Kautsky, sellout extraordinaire, opportunist extraordinaire, who Lenin wrote many polemics against, wrote his theory of ultra-imperialism, which is that basically, they were analyzing World War I, which was emerging at that time. And Kautsky was like, well, it could be that in the future, we're in the age of imperialism now, and these big capitalist powers are going to have a war with each other over resources and lands that they're trying to conquer and this and that. But then beyond that, it could be that the capitalist powers work out their differences and then come to something that Kautsky was theorizing as ultra-imperialism, which was a sort of state of capitalist international peace beyond the current stage that we're in. And Lenin criticized this, saying, well, this is purely hypothetical, yet you are advocating for opportunist positions on the world war as a result of what is purely a hypothetical thing. So you're saying class struggle tomorrow under ultra-imperialism, but opportunism for today under imperialism and the imperialist war, World War I. Well, isn't that exactly what's happening today with the people who are like, oh, multipolarity and this and that? It's opportunism for today, and then class struggle maybe tomorrow. Well, it's exactly the same. So anyway, just to say a few words on that. It is going to take a united international workers' movement to stop the USA, absolutely. Does tech play a function in counterinsurgency? Give them bread and circus, and they will never revolt. As the quote goes, according to Prolecult, bread's out. If the market crashes, is Netflix and social media next? Obviously, prisons are far more effective at keeping the most revolutionary people locked up. Yeah, that's the war on drugs in large part. If you criminalize, a major activity of an oppressed group, then, like a recreational activity like cannabis use, and all kinds of other stuff too, then you have a great excuse for locking up people in that group who are, hey, coincidentally, quote unquote, also most likely to be your political enemies and be engaging in class struggle. So yeah, I don't know. Clearly, we do live in an age which is drenched in entertainment. I mean, it's not necessarily all a bad thing. Everybody loves a good cat video once in a while. But I do think that there's a point where, the cat videos and the watching people from other countries try food from other countries videos, like, it will run out at some point. And, all of the various, like, garbage Netflix series that people spend, like, 50 hours of their life watching. Yeah, at some point, that is not going to be able to compete with the fact that, like, hey, I haven't eaten in 2 days, So yeah, I mean, I think it plays a role, but this is part of our role too, is to agitate. Remember, I was talking before about agitating is helping people to draw out, think about their problems. So not encouraging that escapism. I think a certain amount of escapism is just healthy and vital for psychological well-being, so you don't like utterly snap. Being involved in and appreciating good creative pursuits, whether it's music, art, movies, like, even more popular forms, can be a good release for people. But we want to make sure we bring it back around and keep people engaged in class struggle and developing their class consciousness. Definitely, you can't let that get too far out of the picture ever. Some praise for Michael Brooks here. Yeah, like I said, I'm just not that familiar. I don't doubt that he was better than Cenk or Kalinske. It's hard not to be better than Cenk or Kalinske. Somebody says, I'm in Red Fight Back. They formed out of the Young Communist League or Youth Communist League as a result of a sexual harassment scandal. Yeah, I've read Red Fight Back's website. It looked very good from what I saw. YCL is just another continuation of the reactionary, perverted, male chauvinist British communists we've been suffering with for a century. They look edgy, but that's it. It's a way to defang potential revolutionaries and turn them into this CPB, Reactionary Labour Party. That is basically what I've heard as well. We also need to take control of the narrative that capitalism doesn't work, since most go into the conspiracy theories of rich families. Yeah, you gotta, when you see people talking about like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, like, you have to talk about the system. Like, yeah, these were families that participated in the system, but it is about the system, and class struggle is the motive force of history, not individual conspiracies of families. Although, the bourgeoisie, they call them the 1% or the 1% of the 1% for a reason. There's a limited amount of people in there, and there are prominent families. But, you can remind people, you can have these, things about the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers, which, sometimes, depending on which families they're talking about, are just kind of horrible right-wing anti-Jewish conspiracy theories. The richest people, the richest families, you've never heard of. I haven't heard of, and you haven't heard of, because they have enough money to be invisible. And, even the conspiracy theorists don't talk about them. But yeah, you have to bring it back around to the system, keeping in mind that, in that capitalist class, there is a limited number of families, and so some of them are going to show up over and over again. But yeah, it's not just like that they individually have like, I mean, you can go on the Christian libertarian internet and find, it's a dime a dozen for people who are going to sell you their secret Bible code that explains how, like, actually Satan engineered the DNA of, the Rothschilds or whatever. No, it's the system. It's the system. I mean, granted, it's a psychopathic system of minoritarian rule over the misery and death of the masses. That's psychopathic, and yeah, if you're ruling that system and participating in it, like benefiting from it, profiting off of it, and you're at all aware of that, I mean, that certainly lends itself to some of the most horrendous people. What does it really take to participate in that system and not be bothered by the fact that that is the way the system works? So, we could say there's a dialectic there between selecting for people who don't really mind profiting off of that system and being like a fucking psycho. But again, it is the system. It's the private property laws. It's all of that as a system that is important. On Haiti, I'm disappointed in Mexico. President Obrador, he's putting troops. Yeah, my understanding is the U.S. and Mexico are collaborating on that. And that is terrible. You know, people really celebrated Mexico recently when they put the limits on the mining and stuff. You know, they're like nationalizing their lithium, I think. But again, you know, that now they're participating in the U.S.'s imperialism in Haiti, and so you gotta keep that in mind. So Lula in Brazil did the same thing, helped militarily squash protests in Haiti. Did not know that. Um, Lula winning is vital, but it's disappointing when some MLs paint Lula as something more than he is. I mean, it's like Bernie, or it's like this left coalition that I'm pushing. You have to do something to build the left power and to get more opportunities for us to agitate, to spread our message, etc. But to a point, as far as like what you're supporting. I was just reading about, well, Brazil has two communist parties, and one of them at least was supporting Lula. I think that they're probably doing so being aware of all this stuff, like he's not a communist, etc. But doing so in order to get somewhat better conditions for the struggle and for the left. Fair. That doesn't mean you endorse everything that they do. In fact, you're supposed to agitate against all of the bad stuff that they do. So if he starts going on the foreign policy stuff like, hey, let's help the U.S. Invade Haiti, obviously you push against that as vociferously as you possibly can. You know, in the United States, people try to make this case for like, oh, that's why we got to support the Democrats. The Democrats are a right-wing party. They're not even social democrats. So people try to make this like, I mean, it's a bad analogy in the first place to Germany and the SPD and the communists like not working together and, oh, that's why Hitler rose to power. It's literally not why Hitler rose to power. There was not an election involved in that, for example. But okay, fine. You want to make the argument that the more opportunist Soc Dems and the Marxists should align for various somewhat limited purposes. You know, I can listen to that. But the Democrats are not even Soc Dems. So don't try to make that argument. Like Bernie Sanders was a Soc Dem, okay? And he had all this sort of classic failings of bad foreign policy and stuff like that. But it was the like leftmost moment we had in mainstream U.S. politics in 50 years. Worth supporting because it's an opportunity for the left to surge through. This channel started during that time. A lot of listeners, the early listeners of this channel, came along with this channel because of that. You take advantage of those opportunities, but you know where the line is, I guess is the point. And, you know, people will disagree about where the line is, but we need to build more consensus around that. One of the biggest reasons a lot of left comms hate Engels is for his preface to Volume 3 of Capital, because he says that commodity production existed before capitalism, even though Marx said the same thing time and time again. Yeah, it's funny to me. I see the sort of Soc Dems and also like some left comms lashing out at Engels for being like, you know, anti-Marxist or whatever. Probably he had some of the best idea of what Marx was actually about and was the, you know, next extension of continuing that work on. But I've seen that same sort of like, oh, Engels began the perversion of Marxism. No, he literally like was right there from day one up to the end. It's not even like Marx and Engels had a big like falling out or something. It's very interesting all those tradcon types romanticize living off the land but support capitalism. Yeah, I mean, it's like Alex Jones's slogan of like, the solution to 1984 is 1776. Bro, we're not in an agrarian economy anymore. Like, it's completely at odds with, but, you know, somebody else pointed this out too. It's like libertarians think that we're still in this sort of small production, semi-agrarian, like, just emerged out of feudalism system. They don't like imperialism, but that is just... This is the stage of capitalism that we're in. If you're for capitalism in 2022, that's the capitalism that you get. Somebody asking, do you support drone bombings? What in the fuck are you talking about? Have a timeout, friend. Um, okay. Now there's an actual troll. Bye. All right. There was another guy saying, I don't know what. Yes, Lenin couldn't go 2 pages without shitting on Kautsky. All right, so we're getting late in the stream here. There's a bit more chat, but I am going to switch right now to some COVID stuff, which is probably going to have to extend into another stream. It's a very good chat, I have to say, so thank you to everybody who showed up. Let's get at least a little bit of the COVID stuff in. We might pick this up again Friday or Saturday. I'm not really sure when I can do it. Probably not Friday, actually. Real quick, Biobot. This is where we're at, updated 3 days ago, October 24. This is wastewater levels of the SARS coronavirus 2 virus particles, which is probably the best way at this point. They're no longer counting cases basically at all. So this is one of the more accurate and rapid ways to find out what's going on with surges of COVID in the US. And you can see it's come down from that August 1 peak that we had this summer, but it's basically, now it's getting wavier, but it's still plateauing basically at the level that it's been since the spring. COVID is real. It's like all of the previous surges except for Omicron rolled into one. And are we heading now into another Omicron type spike? Because there are multiple variants surging, BQ1, BQ11. There's a bunch I hadn't even heard of. It's like CA1. We're going to look at that in just a second. But anyway, that's the overall pandemic for the United States in the wastewater. And this is by region. So you can see the map down in the lower right shows you the color coding. That orange is the Northeast U.S. that has been having a surge, probably because it got cold the fastest in the country. Also, New York City is there. Huge, international, and Boston, two large cities that are very international in the Northeast. And you can see also that the purple, the Midwest, is starting to surge now as well. The Southeast, and what we call the, quote, South, and the West, which is everything from like Colorado over to California and the coast, those are still flat, but they're probably going to start surging really soon. So overall, not good, and still a pretty dire situation for COVID. Now, I mentioned this in the last stream, but Walensky, the head of the CDC, tweeted this like last week. Respiratory viruses are on the rise across the U.S. And then what's underlined? Respiratory, and then her final recommendation. Take preventive actions to stop the spread of viruses like flu, RSV, and COVID-19. And what are the recommendations? Get an updated COVID vaccine and get your annual flu vaccine. Stay home if you're sick. Oh, also, if you can afford to do that, most can't. Practice good hand hygiene. Hello, you said respiratory viruses. Where are the masks? At a minimum, where is ventilation? Where is filtering the air to get the viruses out so we don't breathe them in? Where is that? Nowhere. She got destroyed for this. Look at the ratio. What was the outcome? Oh yeah, she got COVID. So live by the denial, die by the denial. She didn't die from this, but people have been dropping dead suddenly after getting COVID. So got a graphic here. This sums up really nicely, I think. We often think of the risk, and it's often presented to us, the risk of COVID as just being death during that acute phase, that first month of COVID, when people are most likely to be hospitalized and get the pneumonia and all that. But that's the tip of the iceberg. What's underneath the surface is long COVID. I just happen to like that quite a lot. What else do we have here? Brief note, I mentioned the variants. So this is an epidemiologist. I think he's an epidemiologist who I follow on Twitter. He's a medical type guy. I forget what his specialty is. Updating results regarding convergent variants BU1, BR2, BM111, CA1, and XBB. XBB is a recombinant strain. It's what the X is for. It means that it is two or more different variants combined. XBB is currently the most antibody evasive strain tested and BR2, BM111, and CA1 are more immune evasive than BA2752 and BQ11. So it's now approaching SARS-1 level of immune evasion. And you got all these new variants coming in, some of which are surging. Really, really bad situation. Meanwhile, the head of the CDC is like, wash your hands. No, it's going to take actually a lot more than that. So here's, excuse me. Here's another graphic showing what's going on with the variants. The website that this comes from, let me see if I have this is public.tableau.com, tableau.com, and you can find this variant dashboard there. But it's an infographic showing, I think that this is, I see New York on there in some places. But you can see, what is most represented. You've got BA521, BA52, BQ11, BA4.6, BQ1, and then XBB1, BQ1 in other places. So the variants are completely beyond just, Alpha, Delta, Omicron at this point. We're getting, I gotta take a sip. We're getting an explosion of variants that are all related to Omicron, because that was sort of the quantum leap that the virus took at the end of last year. These are all descendants in some way of BA1 Omicron, or BA2 Omicron as well. Actually, a lot of them come out of BA2. But they're more similar to that. Now, is it going to take another quantum leap and we're going to get like a new equivalent of the jump that COVID made from Delta to Omicron in the jump from the BA2, BA4, BA5 families into something new? Well, we don't know. What we do know is if it keeps spreading, it keeps replicating, and every time it replicates, there's a chance for mutations. And you don't want to do this. So we need to stop the spread. It's not just about the vaccines. Do get the vaccines. They will help you to lower your odds of the worst outcomes. But if we don't stop spread, it is just in vain in the end, because it's going to keep mutating and it's going to escape our capability for our body's immune systems to fight it and for things like monoclonal antibodies to fight it. We're already at that point where most of the monoclonal antibody treatments do not work against some of these new variants. And for some of them, none of the approved monoclonal antibody treatments actually work at all. So this is just the result of spreading it. What else do we have? Just a nice little graphic there. COVID is mild. M.I.L.D. Massively infectious lingering disease. Just a mild virus. That's courtesy of @friendlycovid19 on Twitter. Posing as just your friendly virus, wants to be your friend, and it really appreciates when humans help it to spread in hugely irresponsible ways. What else do we have for tidbits? This is another account @Lisa_Iannatone, IANNATTONE. They follow COVID a lot. Reading up on enterovirus D68, it kind of sounds like airborne polio. It can cause acute flaccid paralysis, just like polio can. But it causes respiratory symptoms and is diagnosed with nasopharyngeal swabs. That's a swab that goes way up your nose into your pharynx beyond your nose. Unlike polio, which causes GI symptoms and is diagnosed in stool samples. For context, enterovirus D68 seems to be one of the viruses responsible for the current surge in pediatric hospitalizations. So there's a screenshot there, Lauren Meyerson. No pediatric ICU beds in all of New England. This is 5 days ago. Soaring numbers of super sick kids with RSV and enterovirus D68. In 10 plus years of doctoring, I've never been more terrified of a respiratory season, and it's only October. Then Frank Belmont at Peds Pop Health says, this is the pediatric surge of 2022, a thread. There are many misperceptions out there about what is happening in pediatric care. I am a chief medical officer at a children's hospital in Chicago. In mid-August, we started to see enterovirus D68, a particular virulent strain causing increased, etc. So this is an airborne virus that, can cause respiratory symptoms up front. That's how it spreads, and it causes symptoms in the respiratory tract where it lands. But then it has, long D68, which can cause acute flaccid paralysis, like polio. So airborne polio possibly. And again, looking at COVID, we get the flu-like symptoms up front, but then in many people, months later, you will get immune depletion, you will get neurological conditions, etc., etc. So let's read two quick articles, and I'll have to come back to the rest of this later. But I wanted to read this. This is about RSV and the flu, since we're on the subject of respiratory viruses that aren't necessarily COVID, but are also looking like they're going to pose an increased problem this year. So this is from The Guardian, Linda Geddes. Immune system evading hybrid virus observed for the first time. Researchers found the RSV and influenza viruses fused together to form a new type of virus pathogen. So to be clear, RSV existed before and the flu existed before, but now they have literally fused together to create a new virus. So the article. Two common respiratory viruses can fuse to form a hybrid virus capable of evading the immune system and infecting lung cells, the first time that such viral cooperation has ever been observed. Researchers believe the findings could help to explain why co-infections can lead to significantly worse disease for some patients, including hard-to-treat viral pneumonia. Each year, about 5 million people around the world are hospitalized with influenza A, while respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, and there's also an even worse form, RSVP, which makes you just respond to everyone. It's terrible. Is the leading cause of acute lower respiratory tract infections in children under 5 years old, and it can cause severe illness in some children and older adults. Although co-infections, in which a person is infected with both viruses at the same time, are thought to be relatively common, it was unclear how these viruses would respond if they found themselves inside the exact same cell. Quote, respiratory viruses exist as part of a community of many viruses that all target the same region of the body like an ecological niche, said Dr. Joanne Haney from the MRC University of Glasgow Centre for Virus Research, who led the study. Quote, we need to understand how these infections occur within the context of one another to gain a fuller picture of the biology of each individual virus. To investigate, Haney and her colleagues deliberately infected human lung cells with both viruses and found that rather than competing with one another, as some viruses are known to do, they fused together to form a palm tree-shaped hybrid virus, with RSV forming the trunk and influenza the leaves. Quote, this kind of hybrid virus has never been described before, said Professor Pablo Murcia, who supervised the research, published in Nature Microbiology. We're talking about viruses from two completely different families combining together with the genomes and external proteins of both viruses. It is a new type of virus pathogen. Once formed, the hybrid virus was also able to infect neighboring cells, even in the presence of antibodies against influenza that would usually block infection. Although the antibodies still stuck to influenza proteins on the hybrid virus's surface, the virus merely used neighboring RSV proteins to infect lung cells instead. Murcia said influenza is using hybrid viral particles as a Trojan horse. As well as helping the viruses to evade the immune system, joining forces may also enable them to access a wider range of lung cells. Whereas influenza usually infects cells in the nose, throat, and windpipe, RSV tends to prefer windpipe and lung cells, although there is some overlap. Possibly, it could increase the chances of influenza triggering a severe and sometimes fatal lung infection called viral pneumonia, said Dr. Stephen Griffin, a virologist at the University of Leeds, although he cautioned that more research was needed to prove that hybrid viruses are implicated in human disease. Quote, RSV tends to go lower down into the lung than the seasonal flu, and you're more likely to get more severe disease the further down the infection goes, he said. It's another reason to avoid getting infected with multiple viruses, because this hybridization is likely to happen all the more if we don't take precautions to protect our health. If this does not make you want to go get a case of N95s like right now, already with COVID going around, this is a bad season so far. Significantly, the team showed that the hybrid viruses could infect cultured layers of cells as well as individual respiratory cells. Quote, "This is important because the cells are stuck to one another in an authentic way, and the virus particles will have to go in and out the right way," said Griffin. The next step is to confirm whether hybrid viruses can form in patients with co-infections, and if so, which ones. Quote, "We need to know if this happens only with influenza and RSV, or does it extend to other virus combinations as well. My guess is that it does," said Murcia. "And I would hypothesize that it extends to animal viruses as well. This is just the start of what I think will be a long journey of hopefully very interesting discoveries." So that's the end of that article. I'm going to do one more article, then we'll go back to the chat, and I'll have to wrap up for today. I will just mention there were 2 deaths from monkeypox. Actually, let's just look at that super quick because that is a very, very quick story. Here's monkeypox cases in the U.S. As you can see, the curve is leveling out just below 30,000. But that's 30,000 cases of monkeypox we didn't have in the early spring this year, or really even in the late, like it started in very late spring. And all that happened in the span of a few months. It's leveling out now, but we've never had an outbreak of more than a couple hundred before in the United States. So this was brand new territory. Now, people don't usually die from monkeypox, or this strain of it anyway. It has a low mortality rate. It can cause extensive scarring and blindness and a lot of other problems, though, and it's very painful. So you don't want it. It is a serious problem, especially if it mutates, because some of the strains of monkeypox have much higher mortality rates, so more likely to kill you. So it's not something you like play around with. A lot of people are like, "Oh, but did you die?" Well, there's a lot of things that can happen that that you don't want to happen, which aren't death. Also, I was just reading an article about the bubonic plague, the Black Death that, of course, affected Europe for hundreds of years. Well, it was a long time ago. But basically, why some people survive that may have been because of immune system mutations, which basically gave those people somewhat of an overactive immune system. And it helped them to survive the Black Death, but today is causing those same changes that led to people surviving the Black Death are causing autoimmunity. So overactivity to self tissues, basically. So it's not just like survival at any cost is always a benefit. It can be that the only people who survive are people who have overactive immune systems to the point of it being pathological in a different way. So yeah, let's not fuck around with this. Anyway, headline there, 2 monkeypox deaths reported in New York City. This was just a week ago. So 2 people in New York City have died after contracting monkeypox, health officials said Friday. The first deaths linked to the disease since the outbreak began in June. And remember, this is, 28,000 official cases. I know that there are more. So anyway, anyone can get and spread monkeypox. The current cases are primarily spreading through sex and other intimate contact among social networks of gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men, MSM, etc. But we've seen it in children. We've seen it in all kinds of people. So it happened to be that there was a big outbreak in that particular population, but not exclusively, not by a long shot. So, the constant downplaying and scapegoating around that really needs to stop. Anyway, 2 people have now died from it. And, is this the start of another surge? We don't know yet. The surge has been calming down for the last month or so. But anyway, that's where we're at. One more thing before we wrap it up. Did that. What did I want to cram in here? Did that. I want to save... Let's do the sudden death one, because I think that is... It's a toss-up. I have an article about long COVID leading to sudden death, and then researchers unraveling the sort of immune component. Let's see which is longer. I'm going to do death, just because it's shorter. All right. So this is from Politico. Can long COVID lead to death? A new analysis suggests that it could. The CDC is beginning to look at death certificates that indicate more than 100 people who died had long COVID. So the thing there, in October 2021, after CDC approval, hospitals and medical facilities in the U.S. began tracking patients exhibiting long COVID symptoms with a specific identification known as an ICD-10 code. So we covered this in a previous video where it enabled research because they made a classification, a diagnostic code for long COVID. So finally, it was a lot easier to study, people who had long COVID or post-acute COVID sequelae. It wasn't just like a random collection of diagnoses. It was finally being filed under this one diagnosis, and then you can do studies more easily on that. Anyway, it's by Aaron Banco. It's from June. CDC is analyzing more than 100 deaths that could be attributed to long COVID by looking at death certificates from across the country over the last 2 years. This is the National Center for Health Statistics division within the CDC that collects death certificates from states after they've been completed by a coroner, medical examiner, or doctor. So they're reviewing a batch of those files, and this review is the first of its kind at the CDC, indicates that long COVID and the health complications associated with it could lead to death. So it's unclear. Now, this is, of course, coming from Politico, and they write things like, it's unclear whether the people who died had underlying health issues, whether long COVID was the cause of their deaths, or whether it was a contributing factor. This is simply not how health works. People are in all different states of health at all times. You have multiple conditions at once, always. And, even children have different pre-existing conditions and things like that, but you're more likely to pick up, just as you age, your body breaks down and wears out in various ways. So that's a very unscientific way to frame that. Let's get into some of the findings here, because I do need to wrap up and kind of move on. The overall risk factors for mortality with long COVID are going to be important and evolving, said Maddie Hornig, a physician scientist at the Columbia University Mailman School of Public Health, who is researching long COVID. So the CDC is still collecting and revising data, but NCHS has so far identified 60 death certificates that list long COVID or similar terminology, for example, post-COVID in 2021, and another 60 during the first 5 months of 2022. We see kind of a lot of this, of people who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe early 60s, just suddenly dropping dead, which is fairly uncommon, but they had COVID like 6-8 months previously. There's people that have whole threads going about this on Twitter. So the CDC said the agency is, quote, working on identifying any deaths attributed to long COVID, plans to publish the numbers soon. There's no test for long COVID, and there's no official definition, but healthcare workers across the country are diagnosing patients who have previously contracted COVID-19 based on a wide-ranging set of symptoms that often include fatigue, shortness of breath, and brain fog. Those are the three most common symptoms. Between 10 and 30% of people who survive a COVID-19 infection will develop long COVID. And somewhere around 20%. Your odds are somewhat lower if you're fully vaccinated, but even then, your odds are like 1 in 6, so far from zero. So a lot of this article is noise, I have to say. So the diagnosis process has made it harder for researchers to study long COVID, like I said, because there hasn't been clear definition of it. But continuing down, there's a significant underdetection of long COVID, said Sairam Parthasarathi, there we go, chief of the pulmonary division at the University of Arizona's medical school and one of the leads on its long COVID study. It ties into health literacy, of someone being aware that they have a medical problem. If someone feels that they don't have a medical problem, sometimes they will not seek care. This is one of the things I pointed out. It's much more likely for women to be diagnosed with long COVID than men. And part of that, I'm wondering, is if this is not just health literacy, that's like being aware that you're sick and having the familiarity to sort of like self-diagnose enough to go seek treatment. But also, you wonder if it's partly men toughing it out and not seeking care. Anyway, continuing on, very few studies have examined the relationship between long COVID and mortality, death. But one November 2021 study of European cancer patients, published in The Lancet, showed a relationship between long COVID and morbidity of the sample population. Morbidity is sickness. When you're talking about morbidity being cancer, that's a pretty significant illness to have. So, relationship between long COVID and cancer there. The study found that about 15% of those who survived long COVID had long COVID symptoms, and their survival outcomes were significantly worse. So, why would this be? Well, we know COVID attacks the immune system. That could be one reason. It also found that those individuals were more likely to discontinue systemic anti-cancer therapy permanently. Quote, "It is certainly possible and probable that someone who is sick from COVID develops complications after COVID and dies of long COVID," said Jerry Krishnan, a pulmonary physician at the University of Illinois, Chicago, who's leading the institution's long COVID clinical study. "I have not seen the data, but I've heard that people have developed heart or lung or brain complications after having had COVID, and eventually they have died." So we've mentioned this before, population studies. There was one out of Estonia on a very large set of people. It was either 100,000 or a million. It was a large sample of people, but people were far more likely to die in the following 12 months after getting COVID than those who weren't. So that's the kind of place that this is coming from. The CDC analysis is pulling death certificates that have words like long COVID or post-COVID, which could indicate someone has died as a result of the condition. At this point, do we trust the Centers for Disease on much as far as publicizing what's actually going on with COVID? Not really. Again, another quote from Parasarathi, quote, "We know that people of color were disproportionately affected by COVID disease as opposed to just mild SARS coronavirus 2 infection. And we know that people who are hospitalized with COVID are also, I would add, much more likely to have long COVID," he said, adding that he recently sat in on a presentation with NCHS that indicated people of color had a higher prevalence of long COVID. When they showed those numbers, it was like, of course, we were able to connect the dots. So when we talk about, the impacts of this, it definitely falls along income lines, racial lines, and that's why we need to look at things like that. All right, just a couple of minutes here left in the stream. I'm going pretty late. Let's look at the rest of the comments and then wrap it up from there. I really have a lot more on COVID. It was a bit of an underwhelming article. There's some much more interesting stuff that I didn't get to, and maybe we'll do another sort of surprise short stream like I did last week just to finish that up. But the thought of a third world war is terrifying. The Ukrainian war right now has already devolved into trench warfare due to new advances in technology, the new types of new killing machines which come out of that war, and a world war meant to break the stalemate are horrifying to imagine. Let me just add to that. So that's one way that capitalism also can try to save itself, is by destroying existing capital, for example, in a war, which then has to be rebuilt. How are they going to rebuild it? Well, capitalism. So that's another purpose of war in capitalism, is when it reaches the limits, as we're seeing, it reaching the limits now of this everything bubble and the falling rate of profit, etc. Well, one way of turning the clock back is destroying lots of capital, and a war does that. So this just in, apparently, and this is from a comment here, this just in, apparently fascists in Poland destroyed 4 Soviet-era monuments yesterday because of what capitalist imperialist Russia of today is currently doing in Ukraine. Yeah, this is like people vandalizing that Lenin statue in Seattle or wherever that is, where it's like Russia hasn't been socialist officially for 30 years. Many people say it wasn't socialist even before that, but it formally has not been socialist for 30 years. And Putin speaks badly about Lenin on a regular basis. Lenin encouraged the creation of Ukraine. If you're supporting Ukraine, you'd be more likely to support Lenin than Putin. It's just people have no fucking idea what they're even talking about. Next comment, the argument that you often see, and I agree, imperialism is the primary contradiction, is only true on an external basis and is sometimes opportunistically used to deflect from class struggle and push nationalist garbage. Yeah, it's constantly used that way. And it's people who, again, have this sort of bumper sticker level understanding of what's going on. but they're able to like sort of jump on Team Russia and feel like they have a home, and that's that. Anyway, Mao in On Contradiction, available at S4A, pointed out that in developed capitalist countries, the contradiction between labor and capital is primarily internal, while in colonized countries, imperialism is the primary contradiction, i.e., leading a national liberation struggle against imperialism is primary. There is no universal internal primary contradiction. I only ever see these campists make the argument that it is universally primary. Agree. So on the subject of Mexico, continuing, campists have been playing up AMLO big time for a while for no good reason. One of the first things he did when he got into office was lower taxes on business and lower regulations on them. So yeah, I remember in the very first days of S4A, somebody hyping AMLO like really big time, and it was that same thing. Like they went into all of that really opportunistic stuff as well. So it's, people just looking for the next sort of sports team to root for. That's not how this works at all. Oh no, I wasn't trying to say that Lula is closer to Biden than to Bernie. I wasn't trying to say that. Um, I was trying to say that Biden is not even like a Lula. So anyway, I'm not sure why you got that impression. Yeah, Kanye West pushing the anti-Jewish stuff, getting it probably from his rich right-wing white friends now. But yeah, Kanye West went on a whole thing, got dumped by a bunch of endorsement deals for pushing, anti-Jewish stuff lately. And I saw somebody with a hammer and sickle in their name being like, oh yeah, Kanye, this and that. Anyway, I was just like, I posted a picture of white supremacists who did a demonstration on a highway overpass, like Kanye is right about the Jews, doing the Roman salute, the Nazi salute. Like, you think this is in some ways socialist, or like Kanye West is just sort of going his own way? What is this about? Campists are everywhere on Twitter. It's actually insane. I could not agree more. I still get them in the S4A YouTube comments. Their comments don't get published though. Or if they do, it's specifically because I wanted to respond to one of them. U.S. public health has to be some of the worst in the world. U.S. public anything is some of the worst in the world, but yeah, you're right. Public health is right up there. When I caught COVID, my mom theorized that the original source might have been from my aunt's son, who worked as a security guard at a casino. I have trouble believing that casinos, under any circumstance, could be considered essential, as not only are you gambling with your money, but also your life due to the risk of catching COVID. Yeah. Although I'm sure in some areas it's like the only jobs around, so essential for that reason. The right wing really made advocating for masks radioactive. Nobody even wants to mention them anymore. I'll say it again, mask up, N95. And yeah, left orgs have absolutely fallen down on this. Anybody who, many people are not willing to take a firm stance on that. And the masks got really, really politicized by the right wing. You're absolutely right. Yeah, this channel is for actual socialists, hence the hammer and sickle on the screen that you were looking at. It's Marxist Unity, we lean ML. So yeah. You missed the discussion on the two-party system in America. Catch it on the YouTube later on. YouTube.com/Socialism for All. Look for live stream number 58. And it will be in there. All right. So anyway, we're caught up with the chat, and let's end it there. I would just like to lastly thank the patrons, whose names are about to be on the screen. There they are. I'll tell you, fixing that image, I keep wanting to say the image problem, but that sounds like a PR thing. No, literally putting the image full screen, that is so much less stressful to deal with. Anyway, thanks to the current patrons, patreon.com/socialism for all. If you want to get your name on the screen, you can sign up for $2 a month or more, whatever you see fit. It doesn't have to be recurring. Of course, the recurring donations help me plan this thing from month to month. I would make content even if nobody paid, but all the support is why we're able to do these live streams, and I'm able to spend as much time on it as I am spending. There will be many more audiobooks coming. I'm going to cram in a bunch by the end of the month. That's the plan. And yeah, much thanks to the patrons there. And again, they're why a lot of this content is getting made, why I have the time to spend on it. Also, engagement counts, so like, share, subscribe. That helps YouTube to recommend this to more people and to keep the channel expanding. All right, we're going to call it there. Thanks again. And we'll see you, of course, next week with more streams and with some audiobooks in the meantime between now and then. Thanks again. And thanks to the chatters for dropping in with their stuff. They, as always, help make these streams what they are.